I call Porter Williams.
Thank you, Mr Chair. I want to thank my colleagues for their contributions on this bill, one which we support. Mr Chair, I want to talk a little bit about, to start off this contribution, about what's led us to having these two bills before the House. And I guess I want to talk about the meeting that Dr Megan Woods and I had fairly early on with members of the board of the Riccarton Racing Board around their desire to ensure that that facility, that the racing club, the grounds and the buildings, some of which are old and historic, actually could remain a vibrant and useful facility for Christchurch. And in taking the step that they have to allow part of the racecourse to be developed, to look at the Reserves Act and allow a portion of their land to be developed for housing, they are ensuring that the facility does continue to go on and be used for the people of Christchurch. And it's a beautiful facility. The grounds are lovely. The Honourable Ruth Dyson often gets to speak at Japan Day, which is one of my favourite days at the course, because the gardens are looking wonderful. The blooms are in full bloom there, the blossoms are, it's just a delightful place to be. And of course on the Sunday they have the market which encourages people from all over the city to head out south in my case to participate. But Mr Chairman, I think it's an interesting bill in that in clause 6 they have chosen to actually put in a definition of affordability for housing. And I think that some of my Auckland colleagues would be quite envious that we in Christchurch actually have a determination of what affordable housing is in a piece of legislation designed for Christchurch. I would like to see affordability in Auckland being $450,000. Then we wouldn't be in the situation that we are currently, where people are forced out of the city. They can't afford to live in the city. They certainly can't afford to buy a home in the city. It's become a paradise, a haven for investors to actually thrive, where houses are actually potentially earn more than members of, than workers do. I think it's an appalling situation. So this bill, this piece of legislation actually tells us what affordable housing, what the cost of affordable housing should be in Christchurch. So that's a very interesting part of this bill. The aspect that both my colleagues have touched on previously is the notion of exemplar, that this development was to be an exemplar, and many of us were very excited about that, because an exemplar development, as referred to in clause 9, an exemplar development has to have some key elements as part of it. The homes have to be affordable. Clause 6 clearly demonstrates, defines what affordable is. It has to be close to amenities, and the area that is being developed is close to good shopping, good road links, certainly schools in the area. It has to meet certain criteria around good urban design, and there has to be suitable infrastructure and transport planning in place. Now, I know when the development was first mooted that the very good local MP attended and hosted public meetings, because there was a real concern by members of the community that having 600 new dwellings within the area would cause all sorts of pressures on infrastructure, particularly on roading and transport infrastructure. It's a very, very busy part of Christchurch. It links the southern part of the city with the northern part of the city, and links through to the airport. So there's quite a lot of transport that goes through there, quite a lot of trucks. And the local people were concerned that the volume of traffic that would be pushed out onto those roads without good planning would cause them further delays within their, within their commute to work and schools and the like. Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair,
thank you.
Very good choice, Mr. Chair.
So there were some very real concerns about that. There is also some concerns about what kind of pressure that will place on the horizontal infrastructure as well. So it is a very, to hear that it was an exemplar project at the beginning really caused us to think, well, we don't have to have concerns about this because they will be taken care of throughout the development of this. But then to hear that the project was not an exemplar project, we asked some questions of the developers about that, and they said, well, actually it meets most of the criteria. Well, clearly it doesn't meet enough of the criteria to be an exemplar project, and that's a real shame. That's, I'm concerned that this is is going to be a great development, but it doesn't meet the standards of exemplar. It's a loss for the people of that community. It's interesting too that at the beginning there were some Christchurch City councillors that had some concerns about what was going to happen with this development. And one of their biggest concerns, of course, was the rationale for rezoning, when there were potentially other areas that could be rezoned for development. And I think that in the course of the passage of the bill, the submissions that were made, that those fears, that those concerns were actually allayed, and that they are now fully supportive of this development. One of the big advantages of this is the relationship that this development has with Ngāi Tahu, that Ngāi Tahu not only have the first right of refusal, but they are very much involved in a partnership to ensure that that there is a significant input from them throughout this development, and it's a good development because of it. And Ngāi Tahu are known throughout the city for having provided lots of different types of housing options, and this one will be no different. The fact that we're looking at adding 600 homes to the community is great. We certainly need more housing, because that, of course, is going to allow us to balance out affordability across the city. And I know that the government has been crowing recently about housing affordability in Christchurch, and saying that it's largely due to their measures around ensuring that Sarah got the right kind of policies in place. Well, actually, I don't think that's the case. I think when you go through a major redevelopment where people are rebuilding homes, when there's all the insurance money that's come into the city, we didn't actually have an issue necessarily around land costs that they do in places like Auckland, because actually the only place where we had any restrictions around our land was in the CBD, where we now find that development costs are escalating because of the cost of land, because that land had been restricted for so long. Mr. Chairman, I will make further contributions on this bill. I am pleased to see that that we have put a benchmark, a line in the sand around affordability. I'm pleased to see the involvement, the partnership that Ngāi Tahu play in this, and I'm very pleased to see that Riccarton, Racecourse and the Racing Board will get to preserve their fantastic grounds and facilities for the people of Christchurch.
I call you